Calling the meeting in order at 6:06. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Selectman Muska, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Do you have the flag there?
Got a flag.
Shit. Froze. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All selectmen are present. This is a special meeting. The agenda cannot be altered, so there's no need for agenda approval. First item, or the next item, is approval of the regular meeting minutes from our April 16th, 2020 meeting. Is there discussion, corrections, a motion?
Make a motion to accept the April 16th.
Sarah Muska, Selectmen.
So
I'll
Maria,
second that. Sarah Muska, Selectmen.
So a motion was made by Marie to accept the minutes as presented.
All right.
Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion or corrections? The motion is on acceptance of the minutes as presented. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
No, that's Selectman Nordell.
Selectman Nordell, aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Deputy First Selectman D'Souza. Boy, we were having some bandwidth problems tonight.
Aye.
Yeah.
I'm on a server, so I don't think it's me, but the next item is the acceptance of our special meeting minutes from April 20th. Any discussion or corrections? Sarah?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen. I have several corrections. And let me see here. First of all, in attendance, excuse me for 1 second while I find this. Oh, okay. D. James Barton, Chief Warehouse Point Fire Department. That should be James P. Barton. And D. James Barton would be Warehouse Point Fire District Treasurer. On page 2, last paragraph, it should be August 15th, not October 15th. Page 3, last paragraph, it says, but she didn't think the town should reward people whose taxes are delinquent. I'd like to add there that didn't need the extra time because of a hardship due to COVID. And page 4, D. James Barton, Chief, should be James P. Barton, Chief.
Okay. So do you move the minutes as amended?
Yes, Selectman Muska will move the April 20th, 2020 special meeting minutes as amended.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell will second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other corrections to the minutes from the special meeting of April 20th? Any other corrections?
Nope.
None. The motion is on acceptance of the minutes as amended. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell,
Aye.
Selectman Baker,
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza,
Aye.
minutes are adopted as amended. We're now on to the public participation section of the agenda. There are two opportunities for the public to participate. There's one at the outset of our agenda and one at the conclusion of our agenda. I'd ask that you state your name before addressing the board, name and address for the record. Is there any comment from the public? Is there any comment from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to communications. There are several in your packet that I thought worthy of inclusion. The first is a letter that I wrote to Congressman Larson in his capacity as a member of the White House Congressional Task Force to address the economy and COVID-19. It outlines what I thought to be concerns that local governments, particularly in Connecticut, may face as we get to the backside of COVID-19. So because that was an official correspondence to a government body, I wanted to make sure you all had a copy of that. The second one, 7B, is a communication I sent to the Board of Finance, asking them to consider implementing a 2% revolving fund to roll the Board of Education's general fund appropriation to the next in an amount not to exceed 2%. That was acted on favorably last night. The next is a letter from the Warehouse Point Fire Commission asking the board to consider, as I understand, transferring pilot funds from the town to the fire districts. Next is a proclamation commemorating Mental Health Month 2020. This is an annual thing that we do. So that's that. And the last one is something that I'm excited to share with you all. We've talked about this. It's been a long time coming. It's almost in final draft. The COVID circumstances certainly messed it up, but we have a near final draft of our community newsletter. It's, as you can see, 16 pages, ad supported. So this,
5 bullet points.
what's that? As you know, I talked to each of you about the title options that we come up with, and this is what the collective determination was. So there's useful information and success stories and local advertising that's going to be dispersed throughout. It's gone through a couple of revisions, not the least of which because we've had to take out when local community happenings will be happening because we just haven't been able to reopen things. But this is, as I said, this is near final. This is going to go out a couple times a year. And the hope is that we'll be able to use this to advertise local businesses, but also as a marketing tool for the town of East Windsor, to show, you know, who we are, what we have to offer, why people should locate their families or businesses here. Every household in the community will get this. We'll have additional ones, additional copies that are available in public places. This is a pretty exciting accomplishment. And again, it's not quite done yet, but it's coming. So we were nearly done with this, but there was actually, this is the only typo that remains, is the or one of the only typos, is that's supposed to be the town of East Windsor, not the Park and Rec Department. We modeled this after the town of Tolland, and Tolland actually does put this out through Park and Rec. This was largely collected by Melissa LaBelle in my office. So she did a great job. So I just wanted to share that as something that's going to be coming near soon. It's 16 pages. It's glossy. It's not going to be a cheap coupon flyer. It's something that's really eye-catching. We're excited about it. So with that, we will move on to resignations and appointments. We don't have any resignations. We do have some reappointments to both the Beautification Commission and the Conservation Commission. Would anyone like to make an appointment?
You want to do them separate or all together?
I think the ones to the same commission with the same expiration date can be done at the same time.
I'll make a motion to accept Chelsea Holt, Tim Moore, and Amanda Venti for the Beautification Committee, terms expiring November 1st, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll
Sarah
second.
Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
So the motion was made by Marie, seconded by Alan. Just one correction on the motion is the Beautification Commission.
You're right, sorry.
Sarah?
Can we just check Tim Moore's affiliation? When we appointed him to the Sustainable Connecticut CT Commission, he was listed as a Republican. I'm not sure if he changed his affiliation since then.
We can. It wouldn't be material to the appointment to the committee, but we do check those with the town clerk's office before they hit the agenda. I'll ask Melissa to look at it. I just wouldn't want to hold them up because of it.
Oh, no, I wouldn't want to hold him up. I just noticed it, that's all.
Okay. I've made a note to check that, but I'd like to go ahead with a confirmation if that's all right. Seeing no objection, all those in favor of appointing Chelsea Hoyt, Tim Moore, and Amanda Venti to the Beautification Committee? Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
So appointed. Conservation?
Make a motion.
Appoint
Alan Baker.
Alan, you've got it.
Alan Baker, Board of Selectmen, make a motion to reappoint Donna Grant to the Conservation Commission for a term expiring May 1, 2024, and to reappoint Peter Larice, Conservation Commission, regular member for a term expiring May 1, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Alan, seconded by Marie. Any discussion? All in favor? Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
So carried. Our next item is going to be agenda item 9B, Fire Marshal responsibilities. And for this, I'd like to turn the floor over to Selectman Nordell. He's really the one who's worked on this and put this together. Charlie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Selectman Nordell here. So as we all know, we've had Jason has had issue with our current fire marshal as far as reporting duties and logging what has actually been done for inspections on the Broadbrook side of town. As a fire marshal, you're responsible for conducting inspections. Some of them, depending on the building, need to be done annually. Some of them need to be done every 2 years. Some of them need to be done every 3 years. Jason has asked, since his appointment to office, for reports on what has been done in town and has received, as far as I last know, nothing in return as far as reports on completed inspections in town. I mean, in a sense, the town is protected against this, but nonetheless, we certainly wouldn't want to see loss of life or property due to, you know, inspections not being done and neglect on the fire marshal's part. So we came up with a formal objective that we would like to adopt as far as duties, reporting format, time reporting, and basically it comes right down to how the fire marshal would be paid for said inspections. Currently, I believe he was just being paid a straight stipend, regardless of doing inspections or not. This would require him to actually submit a report on work done and hours completed in order to get paid based on doing those inspections and spending those hours submitting reports, doing research, and doing physical inspections. So this is what Jason and I have collectively come up with. Some of this falls right under state CGS. In fact, a lot of it comes from that because they set the rules on most of this stuff. So unless I'm forgetting something, Jason, that's pretty much the gist of it.
So thank you very much, Charlie. As you all know, this board opted to convert the Broadbrook Fire Marshal's position from a stipended position to an hourly position. What Charlie has laid out for us here is basically policies and procedures for what that position ought to adhere to. Especially now that it's an hourly position. The other thing, this was written in such a way so that it's policy and procedure is portable, in that it could be equally applied to the Warehouse Point Fire District or at a future time a joint position if that's where the town ended up. But really what we're trying to do is make sure that not only are we explaining what our expectations are for that employee, but also giving them the guidance that they need in order to follow to satisfy what this governing body expects them to do. So, you know, Charlie and I spent a couple hours on it. Charlie spent a bunch more hours on his own fine-tuning it. I want to thank him for his work on it. And if there's any questions from members of the board, we can dive in and talk about those. Anybody? Sarah?
Selectman Muska. I don't have any questions, but I'd also like to thank Selectman Nordell and thank you as well, Jason. I think it's important to have policies and procedures and have some accountability here. And I think this is a great thing that we should definitely adopt this evening.
Other comments or a motion, perhaps? Selectman
Sarah
Nordell,
Muska, Selectman, I'll move to accept and adopt.
I was going to give Charlie the opportunity to move his policy.
Yeah, go right ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback from phone calls on this side, so it's hard to hear you guys. Yeah, I'll move that we adopt the fire marshal's responsibilities and procedures. Are we calling this an ordinance, Jason?
It is not an ordinance. It is a policy and procedure. This is a personnel thing.
Oh, okay. So I think my motion is good as it stands.
Motion is to adopt the policy and procedure as presented. Is there a second?
Chair Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
Motion made by Charlie, seconded by Sarah. Any further discussion? Seeing,
I'd just like to say,
Selectman Baker.
Alan Baker,
go ahead.
yeah, there's a lot of delay tonight.
Yeah.
That's fine. But anyway, good job, Charlie, Jason. It's good. I'm glad you guys were able to turn it around so quickly. Perfect. Thanks.
So if there are no other comments, I muted Peg. I think Peg was the background noise there. No other comments. I'll call the roll. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Okay. Next item of business is discussion of building department permit fees. For that, I'll invite Rand Stanley to join the conversation. We have been, as we're converting over to a new permitting software, on July 1st, we're turning over to a program called PermitLink. PermitLink has a lot of positive features for the town, not the least of which is it'll have a forward-facing platform for applicants, so they'll be able to track where their application is in the process. Not something that's available to them now, but particularly in the work-from-home era that we're in, for folks to be able to an account and see the status of their permit application throughout the process, that certainly is a service worth providing. As we convert over to this software, it's going to have a fee of $10 per permit. So Rand and I have been talking about updating the building fee schedule anyway, but at the very least, we should update it to include that $10 so that it doesn't become a revenue loss for the town. He's done a great deal of analysis, not only on what we're doing, but on what other communities are doing. So I'd ask Rand to jump in and share his thoughts, and then invite discussion from the board.
Good evening, everyone. I'm only able to discuss this by phone. I don't have a camera in the office. I hope that the information provided in your packets was clear and concise. Included in that packet were the building permit fee recommendations, along with two Excel spreadsheet representations of what the fees currently are. That would be the sheet that has the East Windsor email address on it, and then the second sheet, which is the proposed building permit fees. As we currently seek these application fees now, as it starts out, it's $20.50 for each, for the first $1,000 worth of construction value. It is $15.50 for every 1,000 thereafter. What we're proposing to do is start out, and instead of going 0 to 1,000, we'll take it from 0 to 2,000. I mean, in short, what we're looking to do is recapture the $10 per permit fee from the software company, and we're looking and asking for an additional $5 per permit fee for every permit for the town side of revenue. Ultimately, what does that mean in terms of revenue capture for the town? I figure it's somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 a year. And when I say that, at $5 per permit, we issue anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 permits, maybe on a strong year, 1,300 permits a year. So the burden to the taxpayers isn't dramatic. However, this is totally up to you, and it's in your hands. The real point of this is the fact that we have to try to recapture that $10 per permit fee, which will be on an average year $10,000 to $12,000 of fee or payment from the town to the new software company. That's about it.
Okay. So Rand, do you have a recommendation as to where these fees should be set?
Well, I would recommend that we would adopt the proposed fee, which is the $0 to $2,000 worth of construction value, $50.50, and after that, it ends up. If you take a look at how this breaks down, we pick up that $5 per permit on one end. So my proposal would be to adopt the proposed increase.
And how many of the permits that you receive in the course of a year would you say are below that $2,000 of construction value? Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, I'd estimate, and I don't have a firm number on this, but based on everything I see, I'm going to say 55 to 60, 65%.
And in your estimation, if we were to adopt...
This is when we talk about our HVAC permits, electrical permits, plumbing.
Okay. In your estimation, if we were to adopt the proposed fee change, would we be out of step with surrounding communities, or would we still be market driven, or how would we end up in that sense?
No, we'd still be, I have estimated that we'd still be right with the majority of communities. In fact, we're still undervalued with a lot of communities. That's, and that is the word from many, many contractors that come in here, particularly contractors with Hartford. They comment frequently on the fact that our permit fees are much lower than communities south of Hartford.
Okay, so we wouldn't be putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage in terms of the fee structure. We would be capturing the $10 permit fee to pay for the licensing with Permit Link. When's the last time these were updated? You said 2004?
The 2004-2005 fiscal year.
Okay, so we're overdue.
That was the last time the fees were adjusted.
Okay.
Well, it couldn't come at a worse time in terms of any kind of fee increase, Jay. But at a certain point in time, we have to take a look at, with this new permitting program, there are going to be additional costs to the department that we're going to have to absorb. And one of those additional costs, the implementation of the either the Toughbooks or the iPad, either an iPad or Apple or an Android-based tablet to be used in the field. Particular to the time that we're in right now, one of the advantages to this new permitting program is that it's going to help distance the staff in the building department from the general public, in that they're going to be able to not only apply for, but to pay for their permits online now, which they currently can't do. So there's certainly advantages to it. Another one of the advantages is that I can certainly, and I'll be able to enter the permit results of them right from the field to the applicants so that they have immediate notice of those results. It takes care of the redundant entry of those inspection results back at the office, so it takes that off from the staff.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Rand? Stop sharing this so I can see people.
Alan Baker, Selectmen. I would just like to say, I mean, I think it's definitely time to make an adjustment, and now is a good time. And I feel like these are the type of things that if we're not competitively priced, then it's taxpayers that are paying for this work rather than the users of the product. So we definitely think we need to make sure that we're always right in the mix and not kind of giving away the store here.
Other comments? Is there a motion to adopt the recommendation of the building official and the proposed fee schedule?
Alan Baker, Board of Selectmen, I make the motion to adopt the new fee schedule as proposed by the building official.
Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell will second that motion.
Any further discussion? I'll call Marie.
Jason, not to be picky, but on the schedule, it starts off at $50.50 up to 2,000, and then 2001 to 3,000 at $66.50, but that should come out to $66 and not the 50 cents. And then I got halfway down it, and it seems to be okay after that. But I think that first one is wrong by 50 cents.
The fee increases to every 1,000 thereafter, Marie, by $15.50. I know that appears to be an anomaly in the way the Excel sheet or the way the numbers are laid out. We determined we would leave it at least for this proposal right now, because if we take a look at the fact that we're increasing it up to $15.50, okay, as opposed to $36. If we took the $36 from the present fee schedule at $2,000, and then we added the $15.50 to it, it would be $51.50, where we would be at $2,000 to $3,000. When we look at $2,000 to $3,000 over here, it's $66.50, which gives us that $15. And I know this is confusing. I went through this with Ginny Powers and Jay. The reason we have the 50 cents in place is to help cover the cost and keep the numbers even in regards to the state education fee that we are required to charge from the Office of Education and Data Management for the education fee for building officials and inspectors throughout the state. Currently, that fee is 26 cents. The reason we established 50 cents previously was because at that point in time, the state was periodically raising that fee about every 2 years, which meant we had to come back in and reset the fees. So we went to 50 to have that number. And I know that probably doesn't answer your question. I will try to get that straightened out. But I think if we move forward and adopt the proposed $50.50 from 0 to 2,000 for the first 2,000, and then $15.50 for thereafter, we can work on straightening out the actual cascading of the Excel sheet as we move along. And
That's fine, as long
we'll
as you-
keep it where it
if you
needs to
put-
be.
Okay.
So do we want to amend the motion to accept the recommendation of the building official pending confirmation that the pending confirmation? Do you want to hold this? Do you want to just pass it as is?
It's fine.
Any other comments? Motion is on adoption. Motion was made by Selectman Baker, seconded by Selectman Nordell. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Mr. Stanley, thank you for your time.
I would like to thank the board for their considerations and their support. Thank you all very much, and please stay healthy.
You too. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a discussion of water testing in the Scantic River to include Dr. Kristen Martin. We had this scheduled at our last selectmen's meeting that we were not able to hold in person. And Dr. Martin has now, we're able to join, she's able to join us via Zoom. So Dr. Martin, how are you?
Much better. Certainly, thanks for agreeing for the postponement last time. That was a rough 3 weeks to get through that. So much better, thank you. And thank you for giving me some time this evening. Hopefully you all can hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. All right, so I do have a PowerPoint. I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I are with other online platforms. Let me see if I can share that. It's short. Let's see. Hopefully this will all work. Okay. All right, everybody can see this okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Now, let's see if I'm gonna be able to. Well, I'll just go through this way. All right, so I was asked at the last meeting to kind of give a little quick overview of the results of the 2019 testing season. So I've been doing this now for over a decade, I believe, is when I first began the Scantic River Water Monitoring Program with the help of a ton of volunteers and certainly with wonderful financial support from the town of East Windsor and the American Heritage River Commission. So thank all of you. So this is just a really short summary of the East Windsor data you hopefully all have access to or have read through cover to cover, the State of the Scantic report that I give for the town each year. But basically the testing is twofold. So we do nutrient testing year-round from 10 sites in East Windsor and of course the other towns that are part of the watershed as well. And we do this monthly. Usually it's the first weekend of each month. We have dedicated volunteer crew that's some of them have been with this project from the very beginning of this whole thing. So we go out, we get water samples from each of these locations. Some we've been doing for the entire 10 years, others we've added or changed as the project goes on. And then I take them down to my lab at the University of St. Joseph and we test for various nutrients. So the volunteers take pH and temperature in the field at the time of collection. And then we test for turbidity, nitrogens, phosphorus, conductivity, which is other ions that are in there, and dissolved oxygen. So what I try to do, because it's a huge data set, obviously, I try to make it as user-friendly as possible. So this is the first year I kind of did this more visual schematic, and I'd love to hear feedback if it's helpful or not. But basically the color coding means that anything that's yellow, and this is all the 2019 data that you're seeing, but any of the boxes that are yellow means that this year's data from that month was higher this year than it was from the same time in 2018. Anything that is green colored means that the data from this year, 2019, is lower this year than it was from the same month in 2018. Blue is, they were exactly the same value, and then any values that you do not see highlighted either represent a month where we weren't able to sample like the previous year. So it might have been too cold in January of 2018 and too dangerous for the volunteers to get access to the river. The river could have been frozen. So we don't have that kind of matching. And in some cases where you see some of these squares where it's empty data, this could also be that it was too risky this year to get to the site. Sometimes we do encounter equipment failures as well, where we don't get a data set. So just kind of looking at it, obviously yellow numbers probably are what you don't want to see because it does represent uptick. I do have all the data since the beginning of the test. I'm hoping that maybe next year I'll be able to do a composite kind of decade look at trends from this entire system to see what's going on. But pH and water temperature, pH has always been a little weird in the Scannic. It's definitely not what it should be, but there's a number of reasons for that. Temperatures, it's not bad. The ones, and I know I apologize for the tiny print, the ones that we really kind of do have a little bit more concern with are these bottom two on this page, the nitrate and the phosphorus. Just to give you some context, freshwater systems should be less than 1 milligram per liter of nitrate. So we should not see any values at over 1 in the Scantic. And even though we have a lot of green, which means that our numbers this year were lower than last year, it's very rare for us to have a value that is less than 1. So we do have a pretty significant nitrate issue in the Scantic. Could be the result of runoff. A lot of these testing sites are at road crossings, so we do get a lot of runoff from road going into the river and certainly adjacent landscape uses. And phosphorus as well is another kind of area of concern. Nitrogen and phosphorus kind of go hand in hand with water quality. So phosphorus, we really are trying to look at things again that are on the lower side. It's less than 1 parts per billion. So we do have obviously some really high spikes of phosphorus that we see. Keep in mind, these are a 1 sample. It's basically 200 milliliters of water from 1 sample from 1 day, once a month. And it's a flowing river body. So definitely take all this with a grain of salt, just as long as it's not nitrate salt. And the last one is turbidity. Turbidity is a measure of clarity, so the amount of particles that are in the water. We're not really saying what the particles are, but just how much particles there are. Obviously, the higher values you have, the more concern we have, particularly with aquatic life, mainly fish, because this can start clogging up their gills and causing a lot of fish death. So we do, generally we're okay. We do see spikes, obviously when we start getting into the melt months. Sometimes we do see spikes after rain events as well. So that's the nutrient data. Certainly, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I'm happy to talk other times in more detail what all this means. But this is ongoing. So this is year round. My wonderful volunteers are really concerned when COVID came around because, of course, my lab at St. Joe's is shut down and I can't do the testing. But they're like, can we still get water? I'm like, yeah. So I have a nice extra fridge full of stockpiled Scannic River water that as soon as I can get back to my lab, we'll start testing all that good stuff. The other part of the project is the summer Ecoli monitoring. This is the one I am extremely grateful for, the financial support from the town. The nutrient work, I basically pay for out of my pocket. Sometimes I get support from the Scannic River Watershed Association for regents, and sometimes the university chips in. but I would not be able to do the Ecoli testing without financial support because the reagents and testing equipment are a one use. You can't reuse them. Unlike the probes for the nutrient testing, you can use again and again. The Ecoli is a one and done. So I'm definitely limited in how much we can do because of the financial obligations. So again, this is from last year's results. This is only a summer project. So typically we start anywhere from late May, early June, and then we run this until the finances run out. East Windsor, you guys have been the longest supporter of this program, this part of the program, and definitely the best in terms of buy-in. So your data actually goes longer than any of the other towns that are involved in this. I'm usually able to eke out testing, monitoring of E. coli in East Windsor until September, sometimes early October, which really helps the crews that are getting in and doing river work if they want to know how dangerous the river is. So E. coli, just real short and sweet, is an indicator also of potential health issues. E. coli is a bacteria that is found in gastrointestinal systems, humans, horse, chickens, basically anything that adds a gastrointestinal system. Not all E. coli is dangerous. Some strains are necessary for us to be healthy. Other strains are extremely dangerous. So I am not isolating out how much of the dangerous strain we have. I'm just doing how much E. coli. So this is part of a bigger project that the Connecticut River Conservancy runs through the entire Connecticut River watershed, from Vermont all the way to the Sound. And I use their kind of levels of indicators. So basically any number you see up here that is above 235 to 575 is a level where you shouldn't really be having direct contact with the water. There's the level of E. coli is in moderate danger zone. Anything over 575, and you do see some really extreme levels here, that is no contact with water. You shouldn't be in a boat. You should be looking at the water from a distance away. No exposure. Now, a couple things real quickly about this particular graph. This is a composite graph. So unlike the nutrient that is once a month, we get samples, the E. coli is weekly. So usually we get samples on Wednesday. We test as a 24-hour test. We get the results Thursday, and then they're immediately broadcast online, so anybody can see the data. This is a composite of all the month samples. So if you see something, say for August, that is 4 weeks of data. So it represents what might have been one really high week and a low week, but it kind of composites out. So the take-home message from this, we have an issue with high bacterial loads in the Scannic, and it's a pretty big issue. And East Windsor definitely has more of an issue than the other towns along the watershed, more than Enfield, more than Summers. It's definitely a high issue. There might be a link, more than likely there's a link between the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the E. coli. They're all kind of in there together. So the status for the 2020 season, which should be starting very soon, like everything else in life, that is a little bit up in the air at this point in time. I do need to get access to my lab in order to do the tests. We're hoping university research is allowed to start up May 20th, but we have to see if the University of St. Joseph is going to allow us back into our labs. At that point, I will start. It may be delayed. I do have some leftover materials from my own research that I had to stop. So I'm going to be using that this year. It might be a little bit more limited, but it might also mean that I may not have to ask the towns for financial support or as much financial support this year to kind of help offset all the other costs I know you guys have. But just wanted to give you a heads up that the start of this is still very much up in the air. It's dependent upon when I can get to my lab and my equipment. And then the last little thing, we do have a number of other projects that are ongoing in the Scannic River. So if you're not aware that Scannic River is actually getting to be quite famous in the state of Connecticut as a a site of a lot of research going on. So in part of the State of Scannick report, I included a Scannick report card that one of my research students this year did as her honors project. She looked at 3 years worth of data and made kind of a scorecard ranking several sites on the Scannick in a color-coded fashion as to whether they're moderate, low concern, moderate concern, or high concern based on their levels. So you can certainly look at that. The second one here is an ongoing project where we're looking at the ability of vegetation to pull out some of those high contaminants that we've seen, the nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and Ecoli. So we've been doing this project for about 3 years now. We started up in summers. Last year we added Windsorville Pond, and the results are very promising. Aquatic vegetation has a great ability to pull in and hold huge amounts of bacteria and nitrogen and phosphorus. Might be a way to help remediate some of the issues that we're seeing in the river. We also have a couple of other things that have been going on, starting with the Connecticut River Conservancy sample Palooza. This was the first year that the Scannick River was part of this project. It's a once-a-year event where on the same day, samples are collected from throughout the watershed and then sent to an external lab to get all the same kind of nutrient analysis that I do. And it was rather scary, but very affirming to me that the levels of nitrogen in the Scannick were among the highest of anywhere in the entire project area. So that's anywhere in the entire Connecticut River watershed. We're one of the top 3, which is maybe not a good thing to be proud of. And that sample was from the filter beds area right across from Mill Street. And the last thing is a work that a colleague of mine at University of St. Joseph is doing, is looking at viruses, not COVID-19, but just viruses in general and other bacteria outside of E. coli. Has been doing this for several years now with the smaller subsamples of sites in East Windsor in summers, and then looking at what kinds of other things do we have coming into the river with the goal of trying to track a source. So we know there's an issue with nitrogen and phosphorus and E. coli and bacteria. Is there something in the surrounding landscape that might be the source of those? And if we can isolate that, say it's E. coli coming from a horse or a chicken, we might be able to remediate its entrance back into the scan. All right, so with that, I don't really want to take up any more of your time. I'm happy to answer any quick questions y'all have.
Selectman
Alan Baker, Board of Selectmen. Thank you, Jason. I just had a couple of questions. Is there a target pH that you would expect in a stream of that type, or is that pH generally high because of the other levels of things that you were testing we're seeing are there?
Yeah, it's not really connected to the nitrogen and phosphorus. I have a feeling it's more the result of surrounding vegetation that's getting into the water and changing the pH. And probably a lot of it is due to the bedrock that we have in the river. So I'm not as worried about the pH as I am about the nitrogen and the phosphorus. And the pH is also a lot more finicky. A lot can really offset that value, but it is interesting that that's kind of a uniform thing throughout the river. It's not just East Windsor having that issue, but certainly East Windsor does seem to be a higher point, certainly for bacteria, but definitely also for the nitrogen and phosphorus. We're hoping to bring South Windsor online this year. We had them involved briefly and then they kind of disappeared from the project. We're hoping to bring them back on board because it'd be interesting to see the last part of the river. Because right now, East Windsor's, you guys are the end of the chain. But I'd be interested to see is it really an isolated issue within the East Windsor section, or is it just the result of you're at the bottom, of the river itself? So hopefully I'll answer some questions.
So, and just to continue, we've, for a long time, we've been doing this and we've had pretty consistently high E. coli levels and other nutrient levels in the river. Are these results being stored at the state level? Are we sharing this with other agencies? And, what time do we think that we got to do something about this? I mean, it seems like obviously part of this is a runoff issue, and maybe better stormwater management practices would help out, so that's kind of on us as a town. But then there's other inputs probably. And I don't know if we know exactly what's causing the issue, but are we getting closer to that, do you think? And when do we have enough information to actually start doing something about it?
Yeah, no, we're getting closer. I mean, I think that the 10 years at least of the nutrient is helpful, with the caveat that it is only right now one tiny sample once a month. So it's a lot of data, but it's not necessarily robust. I mean, there's a lot of river feet between sampling areas where anything and everything can happen. But I think we're at the point where we can isolate down to areas that seem to have very steady problems. I mean, I'm not going to share here because I want people to freak out, but there are some of the sampling sites that I can almost guarantee you will be at dangerous levels of E. coli and insanely high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus before I even get the sample in. And it's pretty much consistently. And then there's other sites in East Windsor where it's like, you can drink the water. It's so clean. And it's been every month for a year. So I think we're at the point where we can kind of narrow it down and say, all right, let's concentrate, keep monitoring everything, but let's concentrate in this smaller section and bombard it and get samples maybe above and below places where we kind of think we know where there might be sources, and look what the water is before those points, what the water is below those points, and then start getting there. As to your question, do we share the data? Yes. I mean, the state of Scannick goes to everyone that's involved, so all the town agencies, all the conservation groups, the state. And then I also formed last year a Scannick River Water Monitoring Partnership that is an interagency group. So right now we have representatives from the East Windsor American Heritage River Commission, so Dick and Barbara Sherman are in there. The Scannick River Watershed Association, Sierra Club Connecticut was originally the one that had a lot of questions because of the issues with the aerial spraying of fertilizer near East Road, the water quality, and a lot of people were concerned about that. So Sierra Club Connecticut, DEEP sends the representative, their main water person comes all the time. USGS, North Central Conservation Commission. So we have a whole bunch of people, Connecticut River Conservancy, a whole bunch of people from everywhere with the idea of, let's get some handle onto what is everybody doing. And I figured it'd be helpful to learn what everybody was doing. And I was really shocked to learn that we're like one of the few places that's doing this extensive and long-running project. So like, don't tell me that. I was kind of hoping to get some help and feedback from other folks. But we've also started writing some big grants. One of the biggest ones we're trying to get is to create a watershed-based management plan. There is only one management plan for the entire Scannick River. It's actually for Broadbrook in East Windsor. That is it. So there's no management plan for anywhere else. And as far as I'm aware, nothing has been implemented on management plans. There was actually two versions of the project plan that were made, and I don't believe anything's actually done. And there was a lot of those kind of remediation suggestions that were put in the second version, but again, I don't know if anything's been followed up. But it costs around $75,000, $80,000 to make one of these plans, an outside group. So we have to find funding to do that, and also funding to continue the research. Certainly the bacterial research, the nutrient research, and the viral research, and all of those are pretty expensive to do.
Yeah, I think the only remediation that's been done was when Walmart was built. They wanted to do a project for the town, and they did a water quality project flowing into the reservoir, which then, of course, flows out of the reservoir and eventually into the Scannic. So I think, to my knowledge, that's the only remediation that's been done as part of that plan.
Yeah, it's a good read. If you've never read the particularly the second one of the Broadbrook plan, I mean, someone actually went out there and estimated the number of geese on the pond. I'm like, okay.
They could probably re-estimate that higher now, too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So Dr.
Thank you. I think you guys do incredible work, and the American Heritage River Commission and yourself and Scannic River Watershed Association are so valuable and provide an excellent service. And hopefully we can eventually follow through and get some of this stuff cleaned up. Thank you.
So Dr. Martin, this is Jason. You have talked a lot about the work you've been doing in terms of benchmarking different spots along the river over time. You also have noted that at certain points of that benchmarking, you can predict pretty accurately what's going to happen there. Is your research at all going to get to pinpointing, or are you working towards pinpointing versus benchmarking?
Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate goal. We know right now we have a very significant, well-known non-point source problem with nitrogen, phosphorus, and bacteria. And you may or may not be aware, but the Scannic River, the lower section of the Scannic River, East Windsor section, is listed as an impaired waterway by DEEP. But it is listed as an impaired waterway due only to high bacterial loads. So there's nothing in that listing that mentions the nitrogen. I mentioned this to DEEP repeatedly that, hey, you know, we have a huge problem with nitrogen as well as all the rest of it. And they're aware, they're supportive, but, you know, budgetary issues, they only are able to get through and do the watershed really strong look, like once every 10 years, I think. So yes, the ultimate goal is to get from non-point source, which is just an awareness. We know we have an issue, but you can't really remediate effectively a non-point source problem. If we can get to a point source where you can say, you know, here's the issue. It is the result of, you know, this old sewer pipe that maybe no one knows is hooked up and is still functioning and is dumping raw sewage into the river. And don't chuckle, that is a problem, and you do see it along the river. But if we can go to that kind of situation, then that can be remediated. But it's going to take a lot more testing. It's going to take, unfortunately, more funds. So I'm constantly trying to write grants to get some extra funds to take a look at these locations I know are pretty steady problem areas and just use those as kind of our testing sites to try to figure out if we can figure out point source. And the challenge is the sites that are the consistently problem ones are the ones that do not look like they should be. They're the ones that actually there's no houses around, there's no industry around, perfectly lush, perfectly beautiful, water looks clear, and yet those are the sites that have the worst levels of everything. So it's not a, oh look, there's 5 cows taking a siesta in the middle of the river, that's the problem. It's not as simple as that. But yes, my goal is, you know, we want to try to get this to point source so that we can do something.
Thank you. Have you looked at different GIS layering to determine if there might be something or may have been something that may be there that isn't apparent?
We've started doing that. Enough time and more than one of me to do that. I would like to do that. There's actually a relatively new resident of East Windsor that heard about what I was doing and was looking for something to do. And he's a GIS scientist, and kind of hoping after this COVID lifts a bit that I can kind of sick him on that project, because that would really be helpful. And the more help I can do would be great. I'm the one who started this project way back when, and it's kind of been me. So it'd be great to have a lot more. So yeah, we're starting to do that.
Is that Dr. West you're referring to?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Martin?
Thank
Seeing
you all
none.
very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We appreciate your time. Good to see you.
Yeah.
So our next agenda item 10C is a discussion of an MOU between the town and the Warehouse Point Fire District. This comes out of Executive Orders 7S and 7W. The tax deferment that we put in place because of Executive Order 7W also extends to the fire district as well. And so the current agreement between the town and the district says that we will collect 100% of the taxes owed to the district on their behalf and pay it to them in full by August 15th. Because of the deferment that we have granted, we approached the fire district to figure out, if there was some flexibility in that arrangement that may be beneficial to easing our cash flow issues on the town side, but not put them in an adverse position. So I spoke with Commission Chairman Flynn, Mr. Barton, and Amy O'Toole and Patty Cradaville were on the phone as well. And we talked about different scenarios that may be workable so that we can ease the town's cash flow crunch at the same time not putting the district in an adverse position. So that is the backstory that developed the MOU that's before you. The pertinent part is really the third now therefore that says that the deferred schedule of collection of taxes, the town shall pay 50% of the total amount of taxes billed to district taxpayers on August 15th, and the town shall pay the remaining 50% on or before November 15th. Now, townwide, about 42% of our tax revenue will not be impacted by the deferment. The other 58% will be. So I certainly appreciate the Commission's willingness to grant us some flexibility here as we try and navigate through this particular circumstance. I understand that this was approved unanimously at the Commission meeting on Monday evening. So all that's left is for the Board of Selectmen to discuss it, hopefully to approve it and authorize me to sign the MOU. Questions, comments? Selectman Baker.
Alan Baker, Board of Selectmen, thank you. I've looked over it and of course we've had these discussions earlier, I think last week or the week before, or it was a couple weeks ago. It totally makes sense. And thanks to the Warehouse Point Fire Department for working with us on this. And hopefully it'll all work out good for all of us and this won't be a long-term effect on us. But thanks, and I think it's a great agreement.
Anyone else? Is there a motion? Sarah?
Selectman Musko will move to approve the MOU between the town and the Warehouse Point Fire District as presented.
And authorize the first selectman to sign it.
Second that.
So just to be clear, I need authorization to sign it as well. Is that part of the motion?
Yes, and I'll authorize the first selectman to sign the agreement.
Alan, is that amenable to
Sorry,
your
there was
second?
a really bad delay.
Yes, it is.
So the motion is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the town and the Warehouse Point Fire District and to authorize the first selectman to sign it. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the roll. Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza. Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
There we go. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. The memorandum of understanding is approved. I'll sign it tomorrow and transmit it to the Fire Commission. The next item for discussion I sent to you under separate cover. This is the culmination of the negotiations that I've been participating in with D.E. Shaw Renewable Energy, which is, I refer to them as Northlight Energy. They are interested in doing a solar development on the Apothecaries Hall gravel pits. The negotiations commenced in mid-December or so, and we were rolling right along until COVID kind of slowed things down. But we now have a tentative agreement in final form. It's been approved by their governing board, and it's just left to us to approve. The agreement would be for a fixed per megawatt payment over time. The project scale is going to be at least 75 megawatts, but my understanding is it's going to be much closer to 120 megawatts, which will make it the largest grid scale solar development in New England when it's fully constructed. It also will make them the town of East Windsor's largest taxpayer. So with assuming they build out to 120 megawatts, this deal is worth between $9 and $10 million to the town over a 20-year period. The other added benefit is, according to federal regulation, when you put up a grid scale solar development, you have to put a fence around it. And by putting a fence around it, what we're going to do is deter the longstanding attractive nuisance that is the Charbonneau pits for illegal ATV use, and probably the dirt bikers who go zipping down the old railroad tracks. These gentlemen from, again, I'm calling them Northlight Energy, but it's DESRI. The folks from DESRI have been incredibly gracious to work with. It has been a very, very amicable process. I think they're going to be very, very good corporate citizens. Once we sign this agreement, one of the next steps for them is going to be to submit their application to the Connecticut Siting Council, and we'll be off to the races from there. In addition to the fixed per megawatt payment, they'll also be making a contribution to capital projects for infrastructure investments, which is a very nice enticement for the town to enter into as well. Are there any questions or comments on this? We've talked about this several times in executive session. I'm very, very satisfied with how this came out and the partnership that they have demonstrated already.
Jay, can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Okay. I just have a quick question. They broke this down into 3 ownership criteria. The gravel 1, then 2 and 3. What happens if one of those entities the other don't? What happens to the contract then, Chair?
I'm sorry, you broke up a bit there. I understand the question to be that they established themselves as 3 different entities, and what would happen if only 1 or 2 of those entities were to go forward, but the remaining one did not. Is that your question?
Yeah.
So if they don't build it, there is no penalty to them.
Yeah.
they are starting to scale up and something happens and they don't do it. But there's no indication that that's a concern. These guys have, they've had significant success in Connecticut already. They were the ones who developed the what is currently the largest grid scale solar development in Connecticut, which is a 25 megawatt development in Simsbury. And this one is scheduled to be at least 3, if not 5 times that. This emerging industry, this green energy industry, there are not a lot of players in the game, but these guys come with a pretty accomplished resume in a what is still really an emerging industry. So if they don't build it, they're not on the hook. But this is the agreement should they go forward and do the deal.
Okay.
Alan.
Did they give you any indication of what the timeline was? I know the siting council sometimes takes a while. When do you think they'll break ground, or did they give you any idea of what they hope?
They did. So they're supposed to be submitting this to the siting council, I believe, by the end of this month. There's certain, the expectation also was that they would be informally communicating with the planning office here in town within the next 2 weeks or so. I mean, this is going to move fast once it starts. Now, you're right. The siting council process is long, and they're not going through the declaratory process. They're going through what's called the full certification process. That will take a fair amount of time. It could take up to a year, but it'll include, in fact, the town will have an opportunity, if we elect to do so, to exert what's called party status. I certainly, at the very least, would like to be in support of them through written correspondence, but that's an aside. So the timeline in the short term is going to be quick to get the next steps in the process going. But once you get to the siting council process, it is going to slow down a bit. Good.
Yeah, that was fine. If nobody else has a question, I just wanted to ask about the section 1.2.3. The facility continues to operate for more than 20 years. The owner will pay the cash contribution of $300,000 to the town of East Windsor. And if they're decommissioned before then, they don't have to pay that. And I'm just trying to interpret the meaning of that paragraph. And it seems to me that, when it gets to the end of the life of these things, if that's the way they go, I don't know if they plan on like replacing solar panels as they need to be over the 20 years, or if they are planning on like decommissioning at the end. And so maybe they take care of that at 17 years because they figure they've gotten all they can get out of it, or go another route. I don't know. I'm just thinking of the options at the end, of this contract. How does it close out? And I'm wondering if this paragraph is addressing that.
So this paragraph, what happens at the end of these projects typically last more than 20 years. They run 25, 30, 35 years. What this is an escalator to kind of get outside of the scope of that fixed stabilization payment, because, typically what happens with solar technology is the peak value is at the very outset and then takes a sharp decrease. But what they're doing is they're stabilizing their payment over a fixed number of time so that they have some budgeting continuity. What we're saying is that because we're fixing that payment for that fixed period of time, if you exceed that 20-year mark, we're going to get an additional 1% per megawatt for each year after the 20 years that they're in operation, and they'll pay another $300,000 toward infrastructure upgrades. So it's a trigger for additional incentive for the town to continue partnering with them without this expiring. It's a carrot for everybody to stay in the game. Charlie, did you have?
That's all the questions I have.
Well, Selectman Nordell here. Well, Alan got one of them answered, so that was kind of my same question too. But just like to comment that I think this is a great deal. It sounds more promising than the casino. I really hope it falls through, and you know, they continue to press on with it. It also solves our other problem as well, like you said. So good job on landing this and negotiating it for the town. You did an excellent job of that, and it'll definitely be a huge boost for the town of East Windsor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we need, according to the terms of the agreement, we need to approve a resolution for each of those. Is there a resolution?
Sure, I'll do that. I'd like to make a motion to approve the tax stabilization agreement and municipal development impact agreement between the town of East Windsor and Gravel Pit Solar LLC, Gravel Pit Solar 2 LLC, and Gravel Pit Solar 3 LLC, and authorize the first selectman to sign the agreements.
Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell will second that motion.
Motion made by Selectman Baker, seconded by Selectman Nordell. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the roll. Selectman Nordell.
Selectman Muska, I would just like.
Nope. Sorry,
Oh.
sir. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's a really bad delay, but I just also wanted to echo Selectman Nordell's comments and thank you for negotiating this. I think it is a great deal for the town and I hope it moves forward. So thank you for this.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Yes.
Selectman D'Souza.
Great job. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Marie, how did you vote?
Yes.
Selectman Muska.
Yes.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So the motion carries unanimously, and I will sign this and transmit it to them tomorrow. Thank you all very much. Approval of tax refunds.
Selectman Nordell will make a motion to approve the tax funds totaling $3,485.90.
Is there a second?
Selectman Muska will second.
That motion was to approve total refunds of $3,485.93. Moved by Charlie, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Aye.
Selectmen's reports. All right. Despite all the hardships that COVID-19 pandemic has presented, I've tried to keep business running as usual in Town Hall. That includes the series of negotiations that resulted in the agreement that we just authorized. I'd like to welcome Northlight Energy to the town of East Windsor and express to them how grateful I am to have them joining our community and how much I look forward to working with them as they go through their approval and construction phase. Over the last month, the town has continued moving towards conversion of health insurance carriers. We are in the process of converting to the Connecticut Partnership Plan 2.0, which will save the town at least $400,000 in the next fiscal year and thereafter. We're on schedule to complete that conversion in time for July 1st, barring any unforeseen problems. On April 22nd, I joined representatives of Cornerstone Church as they recognized and thanked the nearly 24 school district employees who continue to provide breakfasts and lunches to students in town since the onset of the pandemic and closure of schools. The church representatives presented Costco gift cards to each of those who've been providing those meals. I think there were 22 in total. I am very grateful to the church leadership and their congregation for their generosity. I've spoken with the superintendent and what the town will be doing to help cover the cost of that of the food during the pandemic is we'll be absorbing the cost of the food through the end of the fiscal year. The reason for this is because the town can request reimbursement for the cost of the food up to 75% of cost, whereas the school cannot. It makes more sense to try and maximize state and federal reimbursement opportunities where we can. On April 28th, I was pleased to join in the pop-up parade to thank healthcare workers, responders, and essential employees throughout town. We had very positive feedback from a lot of that, and I'd like to thank Jessica for organizing that wonderful event. On May 5th, the Charter Revision Commission met and to work on proposals for voters to consider on November's ballot. So far, they have identified technical. They are looking. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. On May 5th, the Charter Revision Commission met as they continue to work on proposals for the voters to consider on November's ballot. So far, they've identified some technical and grammatical changes that need to be fixed. And they are looking at the budget writing section of the charter to determine if that system really works best for the town or if there's a better way. So far, they have not come to a conclusion on that. Last night, the Board of Finance finalized the FY 2021 budget on behalf of the town. Due to the pandemic, the governor suspended our normal charter-driven budget process and left the final budget determination to that board. They took their expanded role seriously, I think, put in a lot of thoughtful deliberation, and I thank them for their work. More than 80 people participated in the Zoom meeting to voice their opinions and watch the process unfold. The final budget is a mill rate change of 0.47 mills, with the town budget raised by 1.98% and the Board of Education budget raising by 3.27%. And lastly, on the first issue I talked about, which is the new agreement with Northlight Energy, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the staff who put in a lot of time and thought and effort into helping develop that. I'd like to thank Ruben Flores Marzen, Helen Tots, Joe Sauerhofer, and Len Norton. They have been involved, all of those folks have been involved in all of the discussions we've had with solar development companies, and having them to bounce things off of and provide feedback and ideas really made that a better product. And I just want to thank them for that. So with that, Marie.
I have no report for tonight, Jason.
Okay. Selectman Baker.
All right. Let me see here. Did have a planning and zoning meeting this week. This past week, they are actually still seeing business come through. They have 2 applications that they're going to be considering. One is for an expansion of a business that exists on Newberry Road. They're putting up a new building. and the other was for a subdivision for the owners of the bubble to take some of the residential property out of that commercial area. So, good sign that things are still moving there. The consultant for the Warehouse Point study pretty much wrapped up her presentation, and now it's ready to come to the Board of Selectmen and to the public. So we're still trying to figure out how to do that in this environment. And it looks like it'll be a Zoom meeting, and and at least that, and we'll see what happens after that. But it's an excellent body of work. I expect text amendments to come out of it that would change our zoning regulations that would be more favorable for development in Warehouse Point. A lot of money was spent. This was a grant on ours, for us for the most part, but a lot of time and effort was put into this, and I'd like to, make sure that it is implemented, or at least from our standpoint of making sure that we do what's necessary to create an environment that is attractive for businesses in Warehouse Point, which is where most of our commercial tax dollar comes from. So I'm sure more to come, and I'm sure you'll all be interested to see that presentation. It's pretty slick. The only other meeting that we've had really is the Board of Finance public hearing, which I'm sure everybody will talk about, so I won't go into great detail. I think pretty much the best possible outcome was achieved there, and it was hard, and it was probably not what everybody wanted, but compromises never really are. Due to the savings gained by the adoption of the State Plan 2.0 and the executive order allowing them to keep their grant money over the year, and restoration of $100,000 of budget funds by the Board of Finance, I think that makes them fairly close to whole. And it's still a little bit in flux as far as, from my point of view, exactly where they're at. So I really do look forward to seeing how they plan on utilizing those funds. But I do think that they're in better shape than a lot of us thought they were going to be, and what's going to be a tough year coming up. So I'm sure there'll be more actions that we're going to need to take over the next year to make sure the school is right. But I think that's good for now. Really now, at this point in time, from my point of view, we really need to start paying attention and really focusing on the next biggest problem that we have, and that's, solving the issue of taxation in Warehouse Point Fire Department. So I look forward to turning our attention there and working on that and trying to come to a conclusion that is long-term before the next budget season. And I did have more here. Got it all on notepads because I forgot the meeting was at 6. So I just kind of scribbled it out. So Peg, yes, I'll put it electronically for you. I guess I'm going to probably wrap it up there. But thanks to everybody that was involved with the insurance stuff. I think that it was pretty stressful for a lot of people, and it was a period of time where we weren't sure if it was going to happen. And so thank you to Jason for taking the ball on that and getting it going. And thank you to Amy for all the work that she did on that. And thank you to the Board of Education and Kathy Simonelli and Christine DeBarge for getting it over the end line. That was a really, really important part of the formula this year, and we couldn't have done it without everybody's dedicated work. So great job to all of you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Charlie.
Good. Selectman Nordell here. On Tuesday, the April 28th, I was honored to participate in a parade organized by Selectman Muska and the East Windsor Police Department. This parade was to honor and recognize the town's frontline employees like medical workers, fire, police, EMS, grocery store workers, and all of our essential employees during this crisis. I received several emails of thanks and praise for this event, so kudos to Sarah for taking the initiative to honor these people. It was a great thing, and I know there was a lot of people to see that happen. We have many other similar events going on in town right now. East Windsor Social Services and Park and Recs have teamed up and been taking recommendations for people and places deserving of a lawn sign saying East Windsor Strong. These yard signs are to recognize people and businesses throughout the town who have gone above and beyond during this pandemic and or work on the front lines. I believe they're still taking recommendations on this, so you can check their website or Facebook. I know they had 2 people's emails that were taking the recommendations for that. I know Debbie Williams was one of them. With the announcement of school not reopening again this year, we can only feel horrible for this year's graduating classes who won't enjoy the traditional circumstance. However, the Booster Club and others have been figuring out ways to honor and recognize these students with yard signs and other creative means. Congratulations to all the graduating classes. We wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. I've said it before, but I feel it deserves repeating again, so I'm going to say again, I can't express how proud I am of our local businesses stepping up and doing donations to those in need, and in helping out our frontline workers as well. I know some of the restaurants and stuff, you know, bringing food to EMS workers, fire workers, and even some of the grocery store workers have gotten some food from some of the restaurants. So I hope, you know, even at a time when they're struggling, they're still giving back to the community. So I hope people are using them for takeout meals from time to time, and even making monetary donations if they are financially able. As far as meetings go, most have been canceled, so I have very little to report on as far as meetings. I did attend the last Zoom charter revision meeting, and I'm very impressed with the ideas and cohesiveness of this board. They work well and constructively together, and I think we have some great things to look forward to as a result of their collaborations. I also attended last night's Board of Finance meeting, in which the board saw over 80 participants. They heard many comments about the budget, most of which supported or requested a higher Board of Education budget. It was great to see so many people turn out in support of a better East Windsor. I too, as a parent and taxpayer, believe our teachers are worth their weight in gold. I strongly feel the school budget has been neglected, and not to any fault of our current Board of Finance. We understand the taxpayers make the decision. I just pray that at this point, with some future stronger budgets, that they can turn some positive results at the Board of Ed. Yes, we pay a lot per pupil, and our test scores are low, but we also have a unique demographic of students that you can't make comparisons to any other town in this state. I believe the answer to turning our schools around is by supporting them. In the end, this place we call home will be better and could help our taxes in the future. I thank the Board of Finance for listening to all the input and giving the majority who spoke their wish of increasing the Board of Ed budget. I was disappointed that the police department IT position was not put in the budget when it was one of the only positions proposed that the Board of Selectmen had passed. Happy Mother's Day to my mom, Joan, my wife, Christina, and all the moms in town. I hope everyone stays home, stays safe, and be smart, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Selectman Muska.
Selectman Muska. On Monday, April 20th, the Board of Selectmen held a special meeting revisiting the tax deferment plan that was previously passed at the Board of Selectmen meeting on April 16th. There were concerns on how the town would reach taxpayers to make them aware that such a plan was being offered. After some discussion, the board unanimously passed a blanket deferment plan to all taxpayers, deferring payment for 90 days, except for those that pay their taxes through escrow. I supported this resolution because I believe that those who are experiencing a hardship due to COVID-19 through no fault of their own may need a little extra time to make their payment. The tax payment is still due, it just extends the deadline. So just wanted to make everyone aware that that is something that the town is offering to all taxpayers that aren't paying their taxes through escrow. On Tuesday, April 21st, I listened in on the Charter Revision Commission's meeting via Zoom. The commission continued deliberation on their task of revising the charter and discussed cost of living and social security data and voter participation statistics. I agree with Selectman Nordell that this group is working very well together, and I look forward to what's to come. On Sunday, April 26th, I had the privilege of volunteering for the nonprofit Masks for CT, founded by Bob and Amy Stefanowski. This organization, in conjunction with Masks for Heroes, has been providing thousands of masks to first responders and members of the general public who are in need of masks. I spent my morning preparing 400 face masks for distribution for the mask drive-through giveaway that took place at the Xfinity Center in Hartford on April 28th. I'd like to thank the Stefanowskis for their compassion and generosity as they graciously donated 1,000 masks to our first responders here in Easter. That afternoon, I was proud to distribute these masks to the Warehouse Point Fire Department, East Windsor Police Department, East Windsor Ambulance, and Broadbrook Fire Department. After attending a parade in South Windsor honoring grocery store employees who continue to work hard to make sure we are all fed during this pandemic, I thought it would be nice to host something similar here in town. I was glad to organize a thank you parade honoring our frontline workers who have continued to work so hard for our community during this pandemic. On April 28th at noon, a caravan of about 30 cars departed from the former Walmart parking lot and honored Big Y, Fresh River Healthcare, Touch Points at Chestnut, East Windsor Police Department, East Windsor Ambulance, Warehouse Point Fire Department, Geisler's, East Windsor Public Schools, Broadbrook Fire Department, Social Services, and Public Works. Thank you to all who participated. It surely let these employees and volunteers know just how much their community appreciates them. On Monday, May 4th, the Board of Warehouse Point Fire Commissioners met via Zoom. The board unanimously appointed Austin Holden to fill the vacancy on the commission. I know that Austin will be a great addition to the board, and I congratulate him on his new appointment. The district is considering moving to a statutory district in accordance with the Special Act CS Chapter 105. There will be a public hearing and a resolution to move to a statutory district on May 18th at 7 p.m. And a vote on the statutory district will take place on May 26th at 7 p.m. There is an approved plan by the North Central Health District to allow this vote to take place in person in a drive-through fashion. The department responded to 37 calls in the month of April, and although all in-person training has been suspended temporarily due to COVID-19, online training is being offered to our firefighters through VFIS, which is the Volunteer Firemen's Insurance Services Incorporated. On Wednesday, May 6th, the Board of Finance held their final public hearing before adopting a budget of $41,288,059 at a mill rate of 34.73, which is an increase of 1.38%. I wanted to thank the many taxpayers who submitted written testimony on what they'd like to see included in the budget for the next fiscal year. I appreciated being included in some of that correspondence, and I was glad to see that there were 82 participants logged into Zoom during the hearing. Thank you to the Board of Finance for their service and professionalism. I was also a little disappointed that the police IT position wasn't put back into the budget, considering that it was moved forward by the Board of Selectmen. But I do appreciate their service and thank them for, I know they had a difficult task. The Board of Finance also established a 2% non-lapsing account, and the amount deposited doesn't exceed 2% for the total budget appropriation. This is for education, and it'll be used for educational purposes only, authorized by the Board of Ed. East Windsor Parks and Recreation has launched the Hearts for Heroes initiative and is placing East Windsor Strong signs on lawns of those who should be recognized as East Windsor's heroes. If you'd like to nominate and recognize a hero, you can email dwilliams@eastwindsorct.com or scharette@eastwindsorct.com with the name and the person you'd wish to nominate. I hope everyone continues to stay safe and healthy. And as always, if you need any assistance or if I can answer any questions, please contact me at any time. And sorry if this was difficult to hear me. It kept saying bad connection, so I apologize.
Sorry. I said thank you all. We're going to move on to public participation. This is the public's second opportunity to weigh in on anything they'd like to share with us. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none. The next order of business would be for the board to go into executive session pursuant to CGS 1-206A. I'd like to ask for a motion to do that.
Alan Baker, Board of Selectmen. I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session.
Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell. Selectman Nordell will second that motion.
The motion is to go into executive session made by Alan, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor, Selectman Nordell,
Aye.
Selectman Baker,
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza,
Aye.
Selectman Muska,
Aye.
okay. Where's my breakout room feature? I'm going to ask those not involved in the executive session to please exit the meeting. There will be no further action from the board after this. It's 8:15. I'm going to reconvene the meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We have left executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Selectman Musk move.
Motion made by Alan, who seems to have a better internet connection, seconded by Sarah. It's non-debatable. All those in favor of adjournment. Selectman Nordell,
Aye.
Selectman Baker,
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza,
Aye.
Selectman Muska,
Aye.
we are adjourned at 8:16. Thank you all.